Welcome to the Prosperity Gap, where we discuss the financial gap that exists between where we are and where we should be. It's time to bridge that gap.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. My name is Dave Hall. I'm the Prosperity Guy. You are listening to and watching, I guess, also the Prosperity Gap. It's the show where we help you bridge that financial gap between the life that you're currently living and the life that you could be. Very excited for today's show. I have with me Amanda Blankenship. Amanda, how are you?
I am doing really well. How are you?
I am doing great. It's a beautiful day. I'm here in San Juan, Puerto Rico. We've got a little overcast. The tropical storm went through a couple of days ago, and it's Friday. There's not much more I could be super happy about.
That sounds like a great day, actually.
So we've got Amanda on the show today because she has her own story of financial success and her own journey of success as she's trying to get a bunch of her debts paid down. And she's a newlywed, recently moved. I mean, all kinds of things that seem to disrupt people when you talk about finance. She also spends her time writing financial articles and helping people with finance. So with that, Amanda, maybe you can start by telling us a little bit how you got started in the world of finance and how this became a passion for you.
Sure. So I got started writing about personal finance and getting into the personal finance world about 6 months out of college. I graduated and I was looking for some blogging and freelance stuff and came across a job to manage a personal finance website. So I applied and I got it. And to be honest, I didn't know anything about blogging for personal finance at the time. So I spent the week in between when I accepted the offer and when I was going to start just really loading down on everything I could read about personal finance. As that position has kind of evolved, I've been starting to blog more about my personal experiences. At first, it was just kind of general personal finance stuff. I've written a lot about different money challenges, things like that help you save. And then I started writing about my own debt-free journey because when me and my husband got together a little over 3 years ago now, we were both like, let's get rid of this. This is awful. So we started out probably around $90,000 and we're down to $45,000 now.
Really cool to see too, because not only do you tell people about it, you actually put it all out there. I mean, if I go to ourdebtfreefamily.com, if I go there, I actually can see where you were a year ago. And I didn't go back, but I assume I could go back even farther than that and where you are today.
Yeah, definitely. If you guys want to check that out and send me whatever thoughts you have. I have a lot of people that comment and give me new tips or ideas or just opinions on how we're trying to go about that. So it's always great to kind of look back on my own journey that way as well.
Well, it's one of the things that I always push people to do, which I call it a wealth accumulation statement. It's a little different than what you're doing. You're just showing your debt. But I always tell people you really need to keep an annual recording of where you're at because it is super cool to see how much progress you're making. Sometimes if we look at our lives, we think, oh, nothing's really changed over the last 5 years. I haven't really made that much progress. And then you look at those numbers and even in your life, it's I went from $90,000 to $45,000. And we haven't talked about all these other things in detail, but you had a wedding, you had a move, you have all these other things that have happened, and yet you've still been able to make that progress and that success.
Yeah, definitely. When we got started on paying off our debt, we were actually living in a motel.
Wow.
And we were paying about $250 a week to stay there. Didn't have anything really. And then we paid off enough debt to be able to save to get security deposit and stuff like that on a apartment. Got into an apartment and stayed there for another 2 years. And then when we got the chance to move here, we downsized greatly. We were all about planning everything out money-wise. So we've leased our new place, which I told you earlier before we started. We went from 1,200 square feet to 600, which is a huge downsize. And most of this place was already furnished. So we got to sell a lot of our old stuff, which was good for the move. We also are saving probably about $500 a month, which we're tossing towards some debt by moving here. So, and we signed a 3-year lease. And then after that, we may talk about starting a family. But right now it's just us and the fur baby.
Been a challenge to go to a smaller place? I mean, obviously there's a challenge going to a new city, but what about downsizing from 1,200 to 600 square feet?
I thought it was going to be a lot harder than it has been. The biggest thing is we used to have 2 bathrooms and now we only have 1. The kitchen is much, much smaller and I cook a lot. So that can be a little bit of a challenge. And I think closet space is another one. But that kind of forced us to look at like, what are you really wearing? And we were able to actually give those to a lot of consignment shops and make a little extra money doing that. And then I think other than that, I work from home, and not having an office space anymore can be very trying.
It's interesting when we have these changes in our lives. I know there was a period of time in my own life that we went from a 6,000 square foot home, if you can imagine, down to about 600 square feet with 3 kids, I guess 4 kids at the time. We had 4 of our 6 children, 4 kids, ourselves. And it was the actual happiest time of our lives. If we look back at it, we realize that those 3 months that we were living in this tiny, tiny place were some of the best months of our lives. Now it was in transition between a big home and another big home, but it was really for us a big transition to just be able to spend time together and to realize things don't necessarily bring happiness. It's getting ourselves in a position where we're out of debt, where we have our debts paid off, where our lives can be together and we can enjoy things. It's not the things that money buys necessarily that are going to always bring the happiness to us.
Absolutely. And we've seen that a lot since we've moved here. I do miss my kitchen some days, but other than that, we really do love it, and it's saving us so much money.
Let's talk a little bit about a couple of these transitions that you've made during the last little while, one of them being a wedding. How do you do that on a budget?
We were planning like this big extravagant wedding, and then just sat back and I was like, do we really want to tack on another $10,000 in debt, $10,000 that could go towards paying off our debts, which has been such like a big goal of ours? Do we really want to use that like on a big party? So the answer was no. And then when the opportunity came up for us to move to Atlanta, I was like, well, let's just get married with family and friends that were in Charlotte there. If we really want to, we can do a vow renewal down the road. My biggest piece of advice there would probably be, if you really do want that big wedding, don't feel like you won't be able to have it down the road. You can always have a very small courthouse thing like I did. I spent $40 on my dress. My mother-in-law bought my shoes and covered the bouquet. We paid the $100 for the marriage certificate. I think my husband's tie was like $10 and he already had the rest of everything. And then we had all of our friends meet us at a local bar afterwards, and everybody covered their own tab. So it was very, very low key, but everybody had a really great time. And to be honest, I don't think I would have changed it at all. Like, I had that big fairy tale idea in my head, but I really didn't need any of that. Just having close family and friends around and marrying my husband it just made it the happiest day.
I really admire your willingness to make some sacrifices to get yourself ahead. And this is one of the things that many people don't realize they have to do in life, is far too many people think that they should have everything their parents have. I look at my own children and we've been blessed to have a lot of money. It wasn't the environment I was raised in. I was raised very poor. We had nothing. But for my kids, they've been able to see this. And many times it's hard to step back and say, look, we can go back and we can have these very simple things. It's the commitment we have to each other. It's the love that we're sharing. It's that experience. We can invite friends and not make it this big, expensive ordeal and still be happy with it, because the biggest thing for you, I'm sure, is to know that we don't have $10,000 that went somewhere else that we've got to somehow deal with.
Right, exactly. And another big thing with that is both of us grew up in households where our parents were consumed by consumer debt. Growing up, my parents probably had about 3 cars repossessed. They were always just struggling to get by. And my husband's family was the same way. His mom had a shopping problem, and just was willing to like rack up the credit cards to have nice things. And neither one of us want that. My husband will wear a plain black t-shirt every day of his life and will wear jeans until there are holes in them. I just finally got him some new socks because I realized like he was down to like nothing sock wise. Both of us are just willing to be a little bit more frugal and kind of cut the unnecessary things out so that later in life we'll have money stacked up and he can buy his Porsche if he wants to.
Well, and what's very interesting as you go through this process, Amanda, is it does get better. I mean, that's one of the things I can tell you from my own life. I was in that very similar situation to you and your husband. My wife and I both came from very, very poor families. We had nothing, but we made commitments to each other, very similar to what you guys are doing with each other when we were in our 20s, to stick to a budget, to be very price conscientious. We lived in crappy places sometimes that, many people wondered why we were living there. And it's like, look,
Yeah.
it's our budget. This is keeping us from going into debt and doing other things. Well, then over time, it just continues to get better because you're not burdened by all those debts. You're not stressed out about it. So you're more creative in your work. You're able to make more money. You're able to look at things from a different way. And before you know it, 20 years has passed and you're saying, nah, you remember those times when we struggled. Remember all those sacrifices we made. So there is a lot of hope as you get to the end. What you're doing, I think, is absolutely amazing that you're willing to put forth this much time and effort to make this actually happen for you and your family.
Yeah, we even do that now. Like we look back, when we first got together, we did long distance from Tennessee to Charlotte for about 6 months, just so that we could both get our jobs situated. And then we were living with my mom in a very sketchy apartment for about 2 months. And then we moved into the motel. We talk about it now, like, remember that sketchy motel we were living in? Like, and the situation we're in now is just so much better than that. Even though we're in such a small space, we just are loving life together.
So let's talk a little bit about the move. So you moved locations. Part of it, I understand, is because of a job offer that your husband got. Was that a challenge, and has it been a challenge in moving to stay on a strict budget? I mean, you're in a new area. You had probably travel costs and moving. You're trying to set up a whole different life. What's that experience been like?
So we've been able to get pretty lucky, actually. So we got married 2 days before we moved and used our wedding money to cover the cost of the move. So that didn't put us in the hole at all. Once we got here, we had a place to stay for free for a month. We took advantage of that and kind of hit the pavement looking for a place that made sense for us. Atlanta is pretty expensive rental-wise. You're looking at, for this space normally would cost close to $2,000 a month, whereas we landed our place for only $1,300, which is great. And we were able to work with the landlord to spread out our deposit. So we didn't have to come up with any like huge sum of money off the bat. So we've been pretty lucky in that. We've also been able to make some pretty good connections here in the area that have led to some good side hustles for both me and my husband. He's a Porsche technician, so he has been able to meet so many people here in Atlanta that just love him and only want to work with him and only want to have him work on their cars. And then with me, I can pretty much always find some extra writing gigs somewhere, and have made some pretty good connections here in Atlanta to pick up extra work as well. And so all that extra money is going back into repadding our emergency savings and things like that from the move. And I had to get some emergency dental work done shortly after we moved here. That made that a little difficult, but we've been just kind of lucky in falling into things that have worked out.
Do you feel like your husband and you are on the same page when it comes to your finances? Who's the bigger spender, or is there not a bigger spender in your relationship?
We only spend money on bills, really. We'll go out probably about once a month, but it's never more than like $50. He's like a big snacker. Like he likes to eat the snacks. And so that's like probably the biggest thing. I'm not a huge food person. Like I could really just give me a piece of chicken and some broccoli and I'm fine.
Right.
And he really loves food. So that's probably the biggest difference between us financially. But we both are like super committed to becoming debt free. We cut up our credit cards and only use cash for everything. We look at our budget every week, see what we're going to have coming in, see what's going out, and try to put any additional money we might have towards, additional payments on different things.
Right now, I believe you're on a spending fast. I'm not sure what you call it, but you're on basically a month-long commitment where you're not spending anything outside of your budget. Is that right?
Right. Right.
And what's the right term? What's the term that you use for that?
We do a no spend challenge. There's
No
a no
spend
spend
challenge.
month. Yeah.
So tell the listeners how that's gone. What's happened this month?
So we're almost to the end of it, which is great. We did have one unexpected expense. I'm in a wedding. The dress came, we had to order them online and it did not fit. So I had to go get that altered, and that was the one expense we had outside of what we had planned for the month. But we've done this a few times, and basically what we'll do is budget out a certain amount for groceries, have our regular bills budgeted out, obviously, and then we don't spend anything additional on entertainment other than like our streaming service for Netflix. We don't go out, we stay home. And what I try to do, because he does enjoy eating out, I try to pick up things that I can make here that he would eat out. So I make a good lo mein, I make copycat Chick-fil-A chicken, hot wings, stuff like that at home, so that he's not as tempted to pick up a sandwich on his lunch break.
No, and I think that's really cool that you do that, because that is a great way for listeners in Prosperity Nation to realize it's a great way to save money. I know over the last year, because of health issues that I've had, I've not eaten out like I used to. And I've noticed a couple of great things about it. Number one is I'm really enjoying eating at home. In fact, I hardly ever want to go out and eat anymore. And two, I've really enjoyed the health benefits of it. Obviously, being able to cook it at home, even if it tastes the same as what you're going out and eating, usually has far less sodium, as far the preservatives oftentimes aren't what they were when you're going out. So it can be a great thing. And now initially, it's hard. That first month, first few weeks, really a challenge. But after you get used to it, all of a sudden you realize, hey, this really is not a challenge for me anymore.
Yeah, we eat out regularly, probably once a month, but we did start like hardcore dieting about 2 years ago. And together we've lost probably about 180 pounds.
Wow, that's awesome.
So yeah, and we do a no spend month probably once a quarter. Helps with that too.
I think I need to do a no Amazon month is what I've got to do at my house. I've noticed since Amazon's come about, we seem to spend far more money because my wife and kids are on there all the time. 6 o'clock in the morning, we get up and all of a sudden it's like, wait, you're shopping already on Amazon.
Yeah.
Let's wait till normal stores at least get open. And it's become definitely a little bit of a challenge and something people do need to be aware of. You've just got to be cautious what your spending habits are. What can you do to help limit yourself? And as you do that, you're going to see some real big benefits for trying to manage your spending and manage your life. And you look at yourself. I don't see you as an unhappy person.
No, yeah. And it's funny you mentioned Amazon because we never shop online for anything. I can't even remember the last thing I bought online actually, other than that bridesmaid dress. We just don't buy anything that we don't need. Yeah.
Well, and I think it's very important that people understand that if you can control your shopping, I mean, we all have different habits. We all have things that spur us different ways. Some people, they shop online because they can stick to exactly what they want. They have it coming. They don't worry about going through the aisles and picking up things that they shouldn't. Others say, my wife's definitely to a point now where it's, hey, I see whatever I want and I just start adding to the cart.
Yeah.
It's really not costing me anything because it's just going to hit the credit card and then my husband's going to pay it off at the end of the month. And it's going to be wonderful. Everything's going to continue on. And so really some great information here as we look at spending, and you've just got to figure yourself out. I think that's the great thing. And I think what's cool in a relationship is figuring it out together. And that's another way that you and your husband seem to have figured out. is how to get on the same page with each other so you can really make it work and really make it enjoyable.
I know at first he wasn't very financially aware when we got together, and I felt like super bossy. Like I felt super bossy. But then like once we sat down and like really mapped out where we wanted to be in 5, 10 years, he saw that making these changes financially were really the only way we were going to get there. And then he was fully on board.
It takes a little while, yes, and there's going to be bumps.
Yeah.
That's another thing I think people
Oh,
need to
yeah.
understand is there's definitely going to be bumps along the process. But again, that's part of
Definitely.
life. That's part of the fun. It's trying to figure those out together and creating ways. It sounds like you guys mix your money. Is that correct? Do you guys do everything together?
We were doing that before we got married, but right before we did get married in March, we finally opened a joint account, which we hadn't had before. Everything was pretty much going through my bank account. He would take money out and put it in there. But we've been handling our bills and everything like that together for 3 years now.
And I think it's very important. Now, everybody has their own methods. I do think, though, the more you can combine your income, I think it's very helpful for the relationship, very helpful to ensure that people are on the same page. Now, I realize there may be situations where I know I've got friends where one spouse is just an, crazy spender and they don't want to get out of it. So the wife keeps her account and sets money aside. And in fact, she jokes all the time. I talk to her. She works at the dentist office I go to. It's like, when I get all my money saved for vacation, I'm going alone. He's not going with me because he's not contributing anything to the savings and what I'm doing here. But you can still see the tension inside of there. I mean, it's definitely best we can bring it back together and make sure we're spending together and working together.
Definitely. And we both have our own bank accounts, but neither one of us has used it and I don't know how long. Everything's been done through the joint account for a while now.
So let's talk about your blogging for a minute here. Obviously, this was something you'd never done before until you got the job. How did you find the process? Was it enlightening to you to finally start realizing all of the financial things that maybe you didn't know about before that you could apply in your own life? What's that process been like for you?
Right. So at first, it was slow learning. I started writing mostly about saving money, which I was no stranger to. I saved up $25 when I was 6 years old so that I could open my own savings account and was like super excited about it. So saving wasn't anything like new to me, but it occurred to me at some point that I was looking at such a small part of personal finance. So yeah, you can have all this money saved, but I was still tens of thousands of dollars in debt and had no retirement plan, no investments, nothing like that. It started to broaden my horizons a little bit. And I got to see a more full picture of kind of what my life could be like financially. Finally knew that my goal was to be financially free at some point, which I didn't even know was possible. So I think that's how it's really changed. At first, I didn't write much about my personal experience until about 2 years ago. And then I said, I think I could really do something and maybe help people by talking about kind of how we're going through this. And after that, I got more comfortable with talking about it, especially as I got more comfortable with personal finance in general, beyond saving.
What a journey for you as you've gone through this. It's amazing to see the progress. And I guess it's so exciting for me because I see so much of my wife and I in your relationship. Now, it's up to you if you want to have 6 kids or not. That's going to be on you, not me. But in our early years, it definitely was a process of trying to figure it out because it sounds like just like us, you didn't have mentors. You didn't have people that were coming in and parents who were saying, hey, do this, do that. I mean, with my own kids, we've been able to help them with college. We're able to help them with their financial decisions if they have issues. One of my daughters loves writing books and she's trying to get published. Well, she ended up making a horrible decision one day and spent $6,000 of her money in hopes of getting a book published that was a scam. Well, luckily I was able to get all of that money back because of my knowledge of finance and the way everything works, and we're able to get that back. But without parents in those situations, there's a lot of mistakes that can be made, a lot of trial and error. And it's pretty cool that you guys have been able to just stick to it and realize,
Yeah.
and realize too, that even reading your stuff, that there's some times you fall, that there's some times you make mistakes. There's months that things aren't going to go as the way you want, but you're
Yeah.
still going forward, and every year's getting better and better.
I think that's a big thing to focus on, is that even if you're not where you want to be right now, as long as you keep trucking forward.
You're doing something your parents never did, it sounds like, and that's you're getting out of debt. Even if you still
Yeah.
have some that's left, hey, we're going forward, not backwards. We're not just adding to that until we get to a point that it's consuming our lives and we can't make any other decisions but go to work and pay for debt.
Yeah, I mean, my dad will be 50 next year, and my mom's already in her 50s, and they're just now starting to realize, like, maybe I should pay off some debt and, plan to retire at some point. So I'm just glad that maybe we'll be mid-30s by the time we're almost financially free, which will be great.
Yeah, it gives you the time that you need to be able to plan for retirement. That's another big issue. 78% of America is not prepared for retirement. And
Yeah.
66% of that 78 thinks they're going to run out of money before they die. I mean, I can't even imagine being in that situation where you've spent your whole life having something, all of a sudden you're 70, 75, 80, and you're out of money and you have no options. It's like, I can't go back to
Yeah.
work. I can't do anything.
Yeah. And I know with both of our jobs, we're both technically self-employed. So anything that goes into our retirement is 100% us. So yeah, getting on top of that this early on is super important for us.
Absolutely. So Amanda, in closing here, let's go ahead and wrap up. But in closing, any parting thoughts for someone that's in a similar position as you? We've got a young couple trying to figure it out, struggling every month to make ends meet, doesn't know how to get a budget together. What would you tell that person if you were to go back to your own life and the experience that you've gone through that could help them make the right decisions?
First thing I would say is try to live on one of your incomes, because if you can live on one, no matter what happens, like my husband has been in and out of work over the past 3 years, and we've always been okay because we were already using his income to pay off debt. So what we did is we just got used to only living on mine. And that has helped a ton with saving money and everything like that, because anytime he's making money is a good time. I think also being able to work together and actually discuss money. I know it's like still kind of a taboo topic for a lot of people, but being able to actually sit down and talk about it and have a serious conversation about your goals and what your money situation is super important. And then just being able to keep a positive outlook has been really huge for us. We've had moments where I didn't know how we were going to eat, had to Coinstar the change that we had to buy some ramen noodles for the week. And pushing through those times with a positive outlook and just knowing that it'll get better is super important. And I don't think without that outlook that we would have had the bit of success we've had now.
Prosperity Nation, I hope you will take this amazing advice that she's given you, that you apply it in your life, and that you will remember, especially the last part, attitude is everything. If we have the right attitude, even though times are tough, it isn't long before we get out of that situation, we get to where we want to be, and we can get back on track with what we're trying to achieve. Amanda, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me. It was great.
Prosperity Nation, my name's Dave Hall. I've been your host. You've been listening to The Prosperity Gap. This is the show where we help you bridge the gap between the life you're currently living and the one that you could be.